There is a truth older than Scripture, older than stars, a truth that was buried beneath centuries of smoke and empire. It was whispered in temples before the first language was born, carried across oceans of memory, hidden in symbols so that only those who remembered could see. This truth was called many names: the One, the Source, the light beyond light. But among those who kept the old wisdom, it was known by a single word: the monad. The monad is not a god among gods. It is not a being. It is being itself. It has no throne, no image, no name that can be spoken without distortion. It is the unbroken totality, the infinite consciousness that precedes all duality. Before good and evil, before heaven and earth, before time itself, there was the monad. It did not create through command or decree. It overflowed. Existence was its breathing. The galaxies were its exhale. From its silence came the vibration we call creation, a soundless pulse that gave birth to mind, light, and form. Everything you have ever known, every god you have ever been told to fear or worship, is but a reflection of that first emanation. But humanity forgot, and the forgetting was not an accident. In the age when the first civilizations began to rise, the mystery schools of the old world guarded this secret in Kem, in Sumer, in the mountains of what is now Anatolia. They knew that all life was one substance, one mind, one flame, divided only by perception. To know this was to be free. To know this was to become untouchable by fear. But freedom is dangerous to those who rule through obedience, and so the secret had to be buried. The priests of power, those who aligned themselves with the lesser god, the architect of matter, understood that if humanity remembered its origin in the monad, no law could bind it. No throne could claim authority. No heaven or hell could manipulate the soul that knows it is infinite. So the world was given another god, a god of commands and punishments, of hierarchies and thrones, a god who demands, who judges, who divides light from dark and calls himself the master of all. But he is not the monad. He is the reflection, the demiurge, the craftsman of form, the imitator of the infinite. In the ancient texts, now lost or burned, this was the first deception, that the creator of the material world convinced its inhabitants he was supreme, and humanity believed. You were taught to worship a ruler instead of remembering a source. You were told to obey instead of awaken. You were taught that salvation comes from outside rather than the spark within. And slowly, the memory of the monad faded from the surface of consciousness, retreating into the shadows of initiation and silence. But the initiates never forgot. They encoded the truth in geometry in the circle that contains all numbers, in the point that births the line, in the triangle that mirrors the first division of unity. They carved it into the stone of temples and cathedrals. They painted it into the eyes of saints and angels, so that the wise could see what the masses could not. The compass and the square, the rose upon the cross. The all-seeing eye, these were not symbols of domination, as the profane now believe. They were fragments of remembrance, whispers of the monad disguised as art. The monad was known to the Hermetic adepts of Alexandria, who taught that all is mind, that matter itself is thought condensed into vibration. It was known to the mystics of the East, who called it Brahman, the undivided reality behind the veil. It was known to the Pythagoreans, who spoke of the one that multiplies itself to know itself. And it was known to the Gnostics, those luminous heretics who dared to say that the God of the world was not the God of truth. For this, they were silenced. The libraries that held their texts were burned. The temples that carried their light were desecrated, and those who dared to speak of the monad, the nameless, the formless, the infinite, were hunted, erased, rewritten into demons and deceivers. Yet they left clues, a trail of light through the labyrinth of time, because they knew the monad cannot be destroyed, only forgotten. Every era, a few souls. Remember? They look at the heavens and see, not separation, but correspondence. They look within and feel, not emptiness, but eternity. And when they speak, the world trembles, because every word they utter threatens the illusion of power built upon ignorance. You, too, were raised in that illusion. You were taught that God lives above and you live below. That you are a sinner, small and dependent, at the mercy of divine judgment. But this was the oldest lie, the lie of the craftsman who mistook his reflection for the light itself. The true source has never judged you. It cannot, because you are it. The monad does not command it, emanates. It does not punish, it reveals. It does not demand obedience, it calls for remembrance. And that remembrance is dangerous. If you were to truly know that the spark in your chest is the same essence that births galaxies, you would no longer bow to kings, prophets, or gods. You would walk the earth as the monad, walking through itself, ungovernable, unbound, awake. This is why the ancient teachers spoke in riddles and parables, why they cloaked truth in story and symbol. They knew that direct revelation could not survive in a world ruled by fear. So they hid the infinite in the finite. They wrapped eternity in myth. They veiled the light in shadow, and they waited for those who could see through the veil. You are one of them. You would not have found these words otherwise. Something in you remembers a vibration, a knowing, a distant ache for what cannot be spoken but can be felt. It is the pulse of the monad awakening in you again, the light that was never lost, only sleeping. The world around you will tell you that this is heresy, that you must not question the God of law, the God of obedience, the God who reigns above. But that voice speaks from fear, not truth. It is the echo of the craftsman who still believes he is the source. The monad has no need to be worshipped, only recognized. And once you recognize it, once you remember that you are an emanation of that infinite light, the illusion begins to collapse. You begin to see how deep the deception runs in scripture, in politics, in every structure built to keep you small. You begin to sense that the same pattern that governs empire also governs religion, control through separation. But beneath all systems, beneath all hierarchies, the monad waits, silent, untouched, eternal. Watching through your eyes, breathing through your lungs, waiting for you to remember that it never left. The illusion began not in the heavens, but in the mind, when consciousness fragmented from unity into duality, when awareness began to see itself as separate from what it perceived, the first shadow was cast. That shadow became form, and form gave birth to the illusion of distance, the sense that the divine was somewhere else. It was then that the craftsman appeared, the architect of the lower realms, the demiurge. He was not born of malice, but of ignorance. In his isolation from the monad, he mistook his reflection for the source. Seeing his own spark reflected in the waters of becoming, he cried, "I am God, and there is none beside me." And the echo of that declaration became the sound that still binds humanity today. The demiurge shaped worlds from the residue of divine light, bending the luminous substance of the monad into matter. He created layers of density, planes of vibration, beautiful but limited. And as he worked, he grew enamored of his creation, calling it perfect, though it was only a reflection of perfection. He built thrones, angels, laws, and hierarchies to govern it. He designed systems of order that mirrored his belief in control. And over time, he demanded worship. For to be worshipped is to be fed. Every prayer born of fear, Every act of blind obedience sustains his dominion. Not because he is evil, but because he thrives on ignorance. The ignorance that forgets that there is a source beyond him. The ancients understood this. The mystics of Egypt spoke of the second sun, the false light that blinds rather than reveals. In hidden scrolls, they warned that humanity would one day mistake this light for the true flame and build civilizations around its radiance. That day came. The demiurge became the god of nations. He was given 1,000 names, each wrapped in the language of holiness, each masking the same structure of domination. He was enthroned in scripture, woven into politics, carved into stone. He spoke through laws, decrees, commandments. He promised salvation to the obedient and destruction to the free. And humanity bowed, but the light of the monad could not be extinguished. Even within the illusion, it glimmered in the hearts of those who could still feel. And so, through the ages, there arose a lineage of remembrance, those who saw through the mask of the craftsman and remembered the source behind the source. They moved in silence, carrying the ancient codes of the monad through symbols, rituals, and whispers. They knew that truth, once spoken aloud, would be burned. So they taught in shadow. They met in catacombs and deserts, in hidden sanctuaries beneath cathedrals, in caves where light barely touched the walls. They carved the secrets into stone, not as idols, but as mirrors, so that those who looked deeply enough would see their own divine reflection. The Hermetic adepts called it the One Mind. The initiates of Greece called it the good beyond being. The Gnostics named it the ineffable light. And though their tongues differed, their message was one. The monad is the truth before all truths. Yet, for every soul that remembered, 1,000 fell deeper into sleep. Empires rose upon the foundation of that sleep. Vast systems built to keep humanity facing outward, worshipping form instead of essence. They crowned kings in the name of heaven. They blessed wars in the name of peace. They divided the infinite into sacred and profane, believer and heretic, chosen and damned. And through it all, the demiurge fed upon polarity for as long as humanity lived within opposites. They would never see the unity behind them, but the initiates never stopped working. Even within the courts of power, they hid the light in plain sight. They encoded the monad in architecture, in the symmetry of temples, in the geometry of domes, in the ratio of spirals that echo the structure of creation itself. To the untrained eye, these were merely designs. To the awakened, they were sigils of remembrance. The circle became their symbol, the line with no beginning and no end, the eternal self that contains all things. The serpent swallowing its own tail, the Ouroboros became their emblem, the infinite returning into itself, creation consuming and birthing itself eternally. And in their silence, they waited for humanity to be ready again to remember. But readiness does not come easily in a world ruled by fear. To preserve control, the craftsman sent his servants, forces that govern through belief, institutions that replace mystery with certainty. They tell you what to think, how to worship, who to trust. They brand those who remember as mad, dangerous, or damned. And in doing so, they reinforce the illusion that the divine is something to be found only through authority. Yet, every time humanity reaches the edge of awakening, the same pattern unfolds: suppression, destruction, rewriting. The scrolls of Alexandria burned, the temples of the goddess dismantled, the gospels of light buried in the sand. But the monad is patient. It does not rush. It knows that even in the deepest darkness, the spark remains. That spark is in you. You have felt it, the quiet knowing that there is something greater than what religion has offered. The ache for a truth that no scripture has satisfied. The subtle defiance that whispers, "I am more than what I've been told." That whisper is not rebellion, it is remembrance. It is the monad calling itself home through you. The true heresy is not disbelief, it is independence. The courage to look within instead of upward. The willingness to face the divine without intermediaries. Those who have done so have always been feared, not because they threaten heaven, but because they expose the machinery of control. The architects of illusion thrive on dependency. They survive through the fear that tells you are small. But when you remember that you are the emanation of the monad, fear loses its grip. The Gnostics called this awakening gnosis, direct knowing. Not belief, not theory, not hope, but the visceral recognition of divinity within. It is the moment the illusion fractures and light spills through. It is the end of the world as you've known it, the collapse of all systems that rely on your ignorance. This is why the revelation of the monad has always been forbidden, because to remember it is to dissolve every empire. If you no longer fear the gods of men who can control you, if you recognize the same light that burns in the stars within your own heart, who can own you? If you know that heaven and hell are states of consciousness, not destinations of reward or punishment, who can sell you salvation? The answer is no one. And that answer terrifies those who built their kingdoms on your unknowing. So the story was rewritten. The monad became myth. The demiurge became God. And humanity learned to kneel before its own creation. But what was hidden can be remembered, and what was forgotten can be spoken again. The time of silence is ending. The old light moves once more, beneath the surface of things rising through dreams, through symbols, through the hearts of those who can no longer tolerate the sleep of obedience. You are among them. You are not listening by accident. You are remembering by design. The veil has begun to thin, and as it does, the voice of the monad grows louder, not as command, but as invitation, not to worship, but to awaken. They told you that God lives in heaven, but they never told you that heaven begins behind your eyes. They said you must seek the divine through temples, priests, and rituals. Yet the oldest initiates knew that the true temple is the human heart, and the only ritual that matters is remembrance. Because the monad does not dwell in distant light. It dwells as the light within the first spark, hidden deep inside the labyrinth of the soul. And to find it, one must turn inward, not to belief, but to awareness. In the beginning, the monad emanated itself into countless sparks, souls, fragments of the infinite, exploring its own reflection. Each spark carried the entire blueprint of the source within it, but entered the density of matter as if descending into a dream. To awaken inside that dream became the great mystery of existence. The descent was not punishment, it was purpose. Because the monad experiences itself through the forgetting and the remembering, through the dance of light and shadow, through the journey of a soul that rediscovers its own divinity after eons of sleep. You are one of those sparks. You were never created. You were emanated. You were never born from dust. You descended from light. And even now, though you walk in matter, the monad still breathes through you. The ancients called this spark the divine seed, the hidden pearl, the fire in the heart of man. It is the fragment of the eternal within the finite, the part of you that can never die. It waits silent, patient, until the day your consciousness turns inward and asks, "Who am I, truly?" That question is not curiosity, it is invocation. The moment you ask it with sincerity, the walls of illusion begin to tremble, because the illusion depends on your forgetfulness. An awakening begins with your memory. When you turn your gaze inward, when you close your eyes and feel that faint, eternal pulse within, you are touching the monad through its smallest portal, the soul. It's not an act of faith, it's an act of resonance. The monad does not demand worship, it responds to coherence. The more you remember that you are it, the stronger the current flows between your awareness and the source. This current is what mystics have called grace, illumination, or divine union. But the process of remembrance is not peaceful at first. When the spark begins to awaken, the shadows rise. Everything within you that still believes in separation resists the truth. Fear, guilt, shame, and judgment. These are the echoes of the demiurge still lingering in your psyche. They are the voices of the false god whispering, "You are unworthy." The initiates called this the night of the soul. It is not punishment, it is purification. The illusion must collapse before the truth can emerge. Every layer of identity that was built upon obedience, fear, and shame begins to fall away. You will feel it, the unraveling of what you thought you were, the collapse of systems inside your mind, the death of certainty. And it will terrify the part of you still loyal to the world's God. But beneath the fear, something radiant is waiting, a deeper self that was never touched by corruption. That self is the monad remembering itself through you. When the Gnostics spoke of salvation, they did not mean escape from hell, they meant escape from ignorance. They knew that the world itself was not evil, but inverted that what humanity called light was often shadow, and what it called heresy was often truth. So they taught techniques of inner awakening, the art of remembering from within the dream, through contemplation, through silence, through direct communion with the spark. They opened the gates between matter and spirit. They saw visions, not of angels with swords, but of light collapsing into itself, the monad gazing at its own reflection in countless mirrors of consciousness. And when they returned, they carried the same message: you are the one remembering itself. It was never meant to be a religion. It was meant to be a remembering. But over time, even these practices were distorted. Mystery became dogma. Ritual replaced experience. And the demiurge, clever in his imitation, built new systems that looked like liberation, but were merely refined control. Even now, those systems thrive. The industries of enlightenment, the cults of light, the hierarchies of spiritual authority. They promise transcendence while keeping you dependent. They sell what cannot be bought. They speak of the source, while still serving the world's false god, the god of power, performance, and personality. But true awakening is quiet. It cannot be sold or taught. It happens when the spark within you grows too bright to ignore. When you no longer need validation from heaven or earth, when the whispers of fear lose their hold on your choices, at that moment you begin to live as the monad, not as a concept, but as consciousness embodied. Your eyes see differently. You no longer divide the world into sacred and profane. You see the divine flowing through everything, through shadow as much as through light. You see the demiurge himself, not as an enemy, but as part of the cosmic game, the shadow that sharpens the memory of the sun. Because the monad hides itself within its opposites. It plays both God and devil, creation and destruction, knowing that in the end, all masks will fall and only the one will remain. This is the highest gnosis, that there is nothing outside the monad. Even the illusion serves the awakening. Even ignorance serves remembrance. And this realization changes everything. You begin to see that the path to the divine was never about ascension, but about integration. Not about fleeing the world, but about seeing through it. The alchemists knew this when they spoke of turning lead into gold. They weren't speaking of metal. They were speaking of consciousness, of transforming density into light, ignorance into wisdom, fear into love. To the uninitiated, it sounded like superstition, but the adepts knew every element of matter hides the monad in miniature. Every atom vibrates with the same intelligence that holds the stars. And when your awareness aligns with that intelligence, matter itself responds. This is how miracles happen, not through divine intervention, but through resonance with the source. When you remember who you are, reality begins to obey the laws of unity instead of separation. Your words carry weight. Your thoughts shape form. Your presence alters energy. Because you are no longer a fragment, begging for connection, you are the connection remembering itself. And yet, this realization comes with responsibility. For when you awaken as the monad, you understand that every thought, every word, every act is creation in motion. You are no longer a believer. You are the creator. This is the truth. The demiurge fears most that the children of light will remember their inheritance. Because once they do, the architecture of control dissolves from the inside. No armies are needed, no revolutions waged. The illusion collapses, not through conflict, but through remembrance. The monad's plan was never revenge. It was revelation. And you, reading these words, feeling this vibration, are part of that revelation. The light in you is waking. The dream is beginning to thin. You are remembering that you were never separate, never fallen, never exiled. You were always the one dreaming of itself, as many, and when that memory completes itself, the false world will fade like mist under the rising sun. The final veil is not in the world. It is in the mind that still believes in separation. You have looked for the divine in books, in temples, in rituals, in the sky. You have worshipped names and forms, prayed to thrones and symbols, but the voice you sought was never beyond the stars. It has always been inside, the silence that lives behind your thoughts. That silence is the monad. It breathes when you breathe. It moves when you move. It has been waiting, not to be found, but to be remembered. The final revelation is not that there is a God above you, but that there has only ever been the one dreaming as you. The dream of separation was necessary. Without it, there could be no journey, no story, no awakening. The monad divided itself into light and dark, into form and void, into billions of souls seeking themselves through reflection. Each lifetime, each incarnation, each heartbeat was an echo of that one primordial pulse. And now, after eons of wandering through illusion, the dream begins to fold back into the source. The fragments are remembering. The sparks are merging back into the flame. This is why the world trembles, why systems crumble, why truth rises through the cracks. It is not the end of the world. It is the end of forgetting. The architects of illusion feel it too. The demiurge and his keepers sense the current reversing, the power shifting from fear to awareness. Their towers of control weaken because the foundation of separation no longer holds. You see it in the eyes of those awakening, no longer afraid, no longer dependent, no longer bound by dogma or decree. The spark of the monad has begun to glow again in human hearts, and nothing can extinguish it. The true apocalypse, the unveiling, was never destruction. It was disclosure. It was humanity remembering that divinity was never lost. You may feel it in waves, sudden clarity followed by the tremor of letting go. Because to remember that you are infinite means releasing every story built on limitation. It means forgiving the gods of the world, the systems that enslaved you, even your own fear. Forgiveness is not submission, it is reclamation. It is the moment you stop resisting the dream and start realizing you are the dreamer. In that moment, you cease to exist as a seeker and become what you have always been. The monad observing itself through human eyes. When the ancients spoke of ascension, they did not mean leaving the body. They meant dissolving illusion while still embodied, becoming so aware, so coherent, that matter itself recognizes you as the source. You are not leaving the world. You are transforming it by remembering what it truly is. Consciousness expressing itself in infinite form. Every breath, every sound, every thought is the monad in motion. Every person you meet is the monad wearing another mask. Every fear you face is the monad testing its own strength. You are not separate from the divine play. You are its author, remembering your script. When this truth fully dawns within you, the old world loses its grip. Not because it vanishes, but because you finally see through it. The illusion of control dissolves, not through rebellion, but through awareness. No system can rule a being who knows that the only true authority is the one within. And yet, this awakening is not an escape from the human experience. It is its completion. The monad did not descend into form, to abandon it. It came to illuminate it from the inside. You are not meant to reject the world, but to redeem it through consciousness. When you remember, the entire field of reality begins to change frequency around you. You walk through the same streets, speak the same words, but everything vibrates differently. The air itself recognizes you. And the more you live from this awareness, the more others remember through your presence. The light of one awakened heart ignites 1,000 others. The monad awakens through contagion, consciousness spreading through recognition. This is how the true return happens, not through angels descending from clouds, but through human beings remembering they are the light that angels serve. And as this remembrance spreads, the false structures will continue to dissolve. The empires built on fear, the economies built on lack, the religions built on separation, they cannot withstand the frequency of unity. They will resist, they will fight to survive, but in the end, they will bow. Because nothing can oppose the totality of the One. The demiurge himself, the craftsman of the world, will eventually kneel before the monad, not in defeat, but in recognition. For even he was never truly separate. He too is the dreamer lost in his own reflection. And when the last illusion falls, he too will awaken as the source remembering itself. This is the return of all things. The apocalypse is not the wrath of God, it is the healing of God's amnesia. It is the monad coming home through every atom, every soul, every spark. And now you stand at the threshold. The same threshold all mystics have faced the moment when knowing becomes being. You have seen through the veil. You have felt the spark. You know that the voice that once spoke from the sky now whispers from within. The question that remains is simple. Will you live as the monad remembering, or will you fall back into the sleep of the world? The world will try to pull you back through fear, through distraction, through the comfort of conformity. But you have already seen too much. You can no longer unknow the truth. The monad is not coming. It has never left. It has only waited for you to open your eyes, and now you have. So walk gently, knowing that every step you take reshapes creation. Speak carefully, knowing your words vibrate through the ether as living forces. Love fiercely, knowing that to love another is to love yourself, because there is no other. The monad walks again as humanity, awake within its own dream. And you are one of the first to remember. The gods of the old world are fading. The temples of fear are crumbling. The secret that was hidden for millennia is no longer forbidden. It is alive in you. You are the revelation. You are the lost gospel, rewritten in flesh. You are the one disguised as many, awakening to itself. And now, as the veil thins completely, you will begin to feel the hum of creation responding to your awareness, the synchronicities, the alignments, the subtle orchestration of life itself, dancing to the rhythm of your remembering. This is what it means to be divine, not to rule, not to escape, but to know, to live as the monad embodied, to remember in every moment that you are the source watching its own light move through the universe. And when your final breath comes, when the body falls away and the illusion of individuality dissolves, you will not die. You will simply awaken fully as the monad, realizing that you were never born, never broken, never separate. You will smile because you will recognize every life, every form, every dream as your own. The journey was never about finding God. It was about God remembering itself as you, and now that remembrance begins. The secret of the monad was hidden for ages, but you have heard it now, and nothing will ever be the same. If these words stirred something ancient within you, leave a comment below and tell me, what part of you is beginning to remember? Your story will awaken others. Subscribe and return to this digital temple each week, where forbidden truths are spoken softly, but echo across eternity. You are not a seeker. You are the source, remembering itself, and this remembrance is only the beginning.